been donkey's years since I reviewed a Longines watch, and I will be brutally honest as to why. To me, before I knew anything about watches, on this perpetual journey of horological learning, I had always perceived this ancient heritage Swiss brand as just the higher-end offerings behind the glass displays of department or mall stores. By the time I started sharing my passion online, in the infancy of unsocial media, when it came to dive watches, it got kind of lost in the shuffle. Now, while the first Legend Diver, aka the LLD, had already been introduced in 2007, its period-correct 42mm scale made me mistakenly think it was just another vintage-inspired casualty of the oversized trend during that time. How wrong was I? Not only about the watch, but the brand too. Well, today, to correct my ignorance, I want to see what I've been missing. I'm going to review this 39mm gorgeous Legend Diver that I've been graciously lent in. No wristwatch check required because I'm wearing the watch in question. If you want to support more free, truly independent content like this, that's not from a watch dealer, unbiased and from the perspective of enthusiasts like yourselves, do hit that like button. It's the best way to support the channel. Okay, hi guys, and welcome to the show. As always, let's start with some historical context. Production began in 1959, and the Longines Super Compressor Diver reference 7042 hit the market in 1960. Back then, and as the name suggests, it refers to a specialist patented case pioneered by Erwin Piquerez SA, or EPSA. This pioneer of waterproof casing supplied dozens of the top brands of that era, whose names read like a list of top horological aristocrats, with JLC, Universal Genève, and Zenith, just to name a few, and of course, you guessed it, Longines in there too, thus resulting in the justly deserved weight to its current relaunched name of Legend. A compressor case typically, but not always, was identifiable by an internal rotating bezel and dual crowns, but fundamentally what really defines it from just your typical normal waterproofing is the nifty method of how it works. You see, the deeper you dive into the mesopelagic depths, the further the water pressure increases, and then this compresses the seals, thus increasing the water resistance the deeper you go. Simple to summarize, but a real art of engineering to make it into a functional reality. Collectively, these design traits required a larger scale to house them. And so, unlike most 36 to 40mm diameter divers of the time, it was usually at around 42mm, decades ahead of any trend. Rewind to the beginning of this summer, Longines reached out and invited me, along with some of the most loyal NYC Gentry crew, for an exclusive evening at their brand spanking new Soho flagship store. Aside from it being a big honor for us, something unexpected happened. Co-hosting was Daniel Hug, head of brand heritage, along with many of the brand's priceless original pieces from their museum, all the way from Saint-Imier, the heartland of Swiss watchmaking. What was supposed to be a quick presentation turned into hours of a truly mind-expanding window into a legacy of innovation, horological firsts, and a history like no other. From seeing the first ever timepieces to display dual time zones, to military and sports timekeeping chronos way ahead of their own respective time in design, along with fascinating stories of the world's most important aviators, scientists, historical figures, and their own Longines watches. Admittedly, I attended the event before I went in, I was a little bit skeptical, okay? But then listening to the presentation by Daniel, I left converted to such an extent that someday I will add a Longines to my collection. That's how much now I believe in the brand. Maybe I shouldn't attend these kind of events, let alone, co-host it. But anyway, let's take it back to the Legend Diver. Let's go over some of the basic specifications, shall we? So inside we have the caliber L888, which is based on the ETA 2892, which is a highly proven movement. The ETA that it's based on goes all the way back to the mid-1970s. This particular version, however, has been modified. And when I say modified, not just, a custom rotor and a few little aesthetic improvements, it's actually cost certified. But this mechanical winding movement, they've slowed down the vibrations per hour to 25,200, and thus boosting the longevity because less wear and tear on the moving parts, and the power reserve all the way up to 72 hours, which is just fantastic if you're wearing this, Monday to Friday, take it off the weekend. It also has inside the balance spring, what's called monocrystalline silicon. I swear it sounds like something you from Star Trek, that techno babble from Star Trek. But no, it's a real thing. But yeah, that's responsible for the high anti-magnetism, which is fantastic if you use any kind of modern equipment, laptops, even your phone, that kind of stuff. Absolutely fantastic. So again, a little improvement compared to the rivals. Obviously, because it's Longines, because it's Swatch, you got very easy serviceability worldwide, which these days means a lot. Also, you can kind of irritate the watch snobs by saying it's in-house, because technically ETA is owned by Swatch, so it's kind of in-group, so to speak. Now, I must address something of the crown. If I zoom in, and I'll show you exactly what I mean. If I unscrew the crown, really great ergonomics and very thick crown stems. Not sure if you can see that. So they feel remarkably solid, and especially this is important because you got two crowns, you're going to be using this. If you're anything like me, the ergonomics is fantastic, but the manipulation, the locking, the solidity of it, there's no wobble. You get a nice precise, let me just set that so we get a nice precise, lockable, no accidental mistiming accidents, which is the whole point of the inner rotating bezel. But even on the winding, you have no ghost positions because this is a true no date, and hacking. If I pull out the crown again, pull it in, pull it out, there's no ghost positions, no ghost date, and of course the setting of the bezel is bi-directional, so it has that advantage as well. The push-pull haptics of this are just fantastic, so really precise settings. You can feel the quality, and I've got to say, when you manually wind it, it feels far more refined than your typical ETA. So the modifications in here are extensive. On a jog, testing out the Longines there. And I'm really enjoying it. I have to say, I would prefer it on the Milanese. I've put it on my own Tropic strap for the moment, just for the sake of comfort during cardio. This is not the strap it comes with. Only certain designs work with the Milanese. The Seamaster certainly, not the Bland Bay, not the Tudor Bland Bay. The Submariner, no. Squally 1521, definitely. And this, absolutely. So the Milanese is the way to go. I'm connecting with it. I have to say, if I had to choose between this and the Tudor, this all day. This and the Squally, I don't know. You know my history with the Squally. Massive thank you to Longines. Obviously, they lent me this. I will send it back. If I want to pull the trigger, I'll buy it myself. I do not allow watches in exchange for reviews. I just think that's a huge conflict of interest. In the same way, I'm not a watch dealer. That's another conflict of interest. However, they kindly sponsored the production of this video only. My opinions, my thoughts are always my own. I do not allow anybody to have editorial control, tell me what to say, what not to say, and they know that. So bonus points for having faith in yours truly. Not that the criticisms are that substantial. We'll discuss them in just a moment. I'm going to try and enjoy the last few days of summer, so I'm going to get back to my jog. Excuse me. In 2023, Longines finally added a more crowd-friendly 39mm version, initially with a blue or black lacquer dial, then this year, this beguiling snow-white dial variation. The scale reads like a wish list of dimensions with an impeccable construction that keeps me suspecting there's a catch, like it's almost too good to be true. There's screwed links, a super solid push-button clasp, handy on-the-fly expandability or reduction of the fit on a tapered beads of rice affair that we see here. And it will have any watch enthusiast nodding in approval like a Churchill Insurance mascot.
Oh, yes. Yes! Why, thank you.
The sharpness to the contrasting finishes is simply meraviglioso. The box sapphire and subtle stepped bezel framing it evoke all the right notes of peak 1950s classicism, and the detailed relief of the diver on the caseback is whimsically wearing the actual watch in question. A cuteness that illustrates the extra mile Longines went, but also subconsciously reminding you too could be on some kind of adventure. One of my favourite features has to be what's commonly referred to as the Ranger handset. I've used similar styles in watches I've designed, as it's really efficacious in quickly telling hours from minutes, compared to what most divers were using during the late 50s. Interestingly, after a little digging in the history books, maybe now it should be called the LDD handset, as Tudor didn't start implementing it till a decade after Longines. Once again, the glory of another devilishly clever detail is attributed elsewhere. Now you can begin to see why the presentation I spoke of earlier at their store was so fascinating, even if it merely skimmed the surface of a Mariana Trench-like depth when it comes to the brand's historicity. The twin screw-down crowns still has the cross-hatching of old, and combined with the quintessentially diver profile, reeks of a tool-tastic purity. But more profoundly, like my recent video on the Weems-inspired Merlin I co-designed with Laurier, lockable bezels are actually a complication that Longines pioneered with pilot watches, most astonishingly before the advent of World War II, and over 30 years ahead of professional divers even existing. The result in this modern descendant is a remarkable 300 meters, 6425 ISO compliant capability, and all the more impressive considering the relative slenderness. Now this all makes it sound like the kipper's knickers, but what are the downsides? Let's take a look at the negatives. So let's address the lume. Despite the differentiation in shapes used, it's not as good as the solid orientation that you're going to get on the non-white dial due to the markings being inversed, even though I do love in the regular light the kind of three-dimensional aspects of the applied markers or numerals there. Because of course we got effectively less lume. A shame that this is not a fully lumed dial. Imagine this like the Hoya 1000. Now, secondly, compared to the original, and you only notice this when you put it side to side with the original, because of the overall scale being, I guess, oh God, here's the pun, compressed a little bit. Terrible. But yeah, because it's compressed, you get this kind of dinner plate effect, exacerbated by it being in white. The bezel is a little bit overpowering. It looks kind of squished in, whereas it's not so overpowering on the original, and like I said, you only notice it when they're side by side. Now the last negative is, as I unscrew the crown, I wish it was, I think we all do, a real functional compressor. Unfortunately, due to modern case manufacturing becoming so effective and thus rendering that as a kind of redundant case technology, it's just not worth doing it anymore. But it would have been cool to have it, bit of a conversation starter at your Gentry crew meetup, having a real modern compressor diver would be just amazing. So it's really compressor in style only. Not a big crying shame, but would have been nice. There's none of that hipster hype. There's none of that veneration by the publications. There's none of that, I'm not going to use the cringeante value proposition, but it is a value prop, and now I need to go and bathe. in the unquestionably most, wait for it, it's a diver joke here, oversaturated of watch genres, yeah, a bit obvious, the LLD stands out as its own distinctive thing, and that's difficult to do today. In the past, I've talked about how truly iconic design can often be identified simply by an outline. Think of the silhouettes of Batman, Mickey Mouse, or even the Empire State Building for that matter. The list goes on. I feel the LLD firmly falls under this category of instant recognizability, and impressively, over a decade before, Dieter Rams decisively put his celebrated 10 principles of good design to paper, and only a few years after, the Submariner, 50 Fathoms, or Seamaster divers. The problem with Longines is, ironically, almost exactly the same thing that makes them so tastefully timeless and so great in the first place. They are always conservatively designed. They don't take very many risks, and so might not be immediately noticed in this age of attention deficit, look at me flexing, bottom of the barrel, clickbait degeneracy. But let's return to the other side of that coin. And while it may not be the coolest kid in the class, or in this particular case, about bringing anything revolutionary to the table like they once did, it's more concerned with just being an unpretentious, solid, extremely well made, up-to-date, true dagger watch. Or to add a few more signature urban gentry phrases, a strap monster, and naturally, you know what I'm going to say, pure class. And just like the 1950s original, it will remain so for generations to come. And in my opinion, it's far better to be that than a fast food fashion fad victim. So ultimately, it's got me wondering, we live in a world now where Patek has become the accessory for the newly moneyed, with their gaudy, vulgar offerings. Bland Bay has become nothing but a overhyped, worshipped by the hipsters, the watch hipsters. Probably the Pelagos is the only exception. Omega Seamaster, a cash cow that's been flogged to death. And Rolex, well, I'm going to address Rolex again in another video soon. I already have said so much. This speaks to me. I have to say, it speaks to me more. Maybe, is it time for the old world, old money classicism of Longines to shine once again? I think so. I really think so. I think this is a step in the right direction. By no means perfect. That's the point of a truly independent, unbiased review. But let me know what you think in the comments. What do you think they're getting right, getting wrong? What do you think they need to do? What do you think of the Legend Diver? I'm going to give it some time, and then I'm probably going to investigate some other color variations, and who knows, I might pull the trigger. Just when I thought I was out. Porca miseria. Porca miseria. Anyway, guys, don't forget to hit like, especially if you want to see more free and independent content like this. I'll catch you in the next one. Onwards and upwards. Thank you for watching. Ciao. What am I doing?